Hello, beautiful souls. I'm your host, Nicole, and welcome to the Intuition Age. My intention for this podcast is to cultivate a sacred space where we can collectively evolve into higher states of conscious and self-awareness. I believe that the sustenance and purpose of our being is already located within the depths of our souls. We just have to rediscover and realign with it. It's time to go inward to find all the answers, clarity, and knowledge we seek. So let's journey within. Hello. I am recording this introduction on International Women's Day, a day where we honor women, all women, for their strength, resilience, determination, and success. We celebrate all women, despite the social constructs of race, ethnicity, ability, class, and the sex and gender assigned at birth. So, to every individual who identifies as a woman, this episode holds a sacred space for you. And while days will have passed when this episode is released on the Pisces new moon, and weeks, months, or even years may have passed when you listen to this recording, may the frequencies of this day be present within you always. May we tap into that divine feminine essence and reclaim our power. May we unleash the goddess within. May we find an internal balance that aligns with our personal calling and embodiment. In this episode, we call in our divine feminine energy. We recognize that the divine feminine is for everyone and can be embraced by anyone. We restore the balance of our divine masculine and feminine traits and ground ourselves with the energies that encompass our very being. Olivia from New Earth Sisterhood is here to discuss the power of spiritual sisterhood. We will explore the ways the divine feminine is beginning to rebalance in social and political spaces here on Earth. We are collectively elevating into this new earth paradigm influenced by the divine feminine essence. As a sisterhood, we unite together in a sacred community and allow our divine feminine to rise. We awaken into our inner force and connect more deeply with ourselves. Dear sisters, this is your time to step into your light. You are mystical. You are powerful. You are worthy. Unleash your magic today. Hi, Olivia. Welcome to the Intuition Age. How are you doing?
Hi, Nicole. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm excited for our conversation today. So, to start, why don't you just tell us a bit about yourself, what you do, a little introduction?
Okay, perfect. So, my name is Olivia, and I'm a yoga and meditation teacher. I also have a membership called the New Earth Sisterhood membership, where I really try to help like women who are in their spiritual awakening or have like awakened, let's say. Right now the world is a pretty scary place to be sometimes, especially if you're like a very sensitive person, a spiritual person. Like you can absorb so many energies from the outside. And we sometimes forget that as women, our sensitive nature is like our superpower. So that's kind of what I like to work with. So we have meditations, women's circles, all of that. So yeah, and I'd love to organize retreats when we're able to again. I think it's amazing to come together with powerful women and create some magic and just have fun as well and really embody the feminine essence together. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about your spiritual journey. So when did you start getting into meditation or just like sisterhood work or divine feminine energy?
Well, my journey started, I think it was 3 years ago at this point. It's difficult to pinpoint, 2 to 3 years ago. And I actually went to study abroad. I'm from Belgium, and I went to study in Milan, Italy. And well, it's funny actually. It ties in so well with my story. But when I was going through it, like I obviously had no idea. But when I look back on it, it's like wow, it all makes sense. So I was there with a friend, and the friend that I was with was really comfortable and okay with like being alone and just being with me and not really making any friends. And I just kind of like went along with that. And I knew that, you know, in my soul that something was wrong, and that it wasn't right for me, but I just like pushed through, you know, it was really in my masculine. It's kind of what we're taught taught to do, like just to push through and like man up and just go through with it. Even though when my mom visited me, she told me later on, like I knew something was wrong, but you know, I just stayed there. And then when I came back home, I kind of had a breakdown. A burnout almost. Like I cried all the time. I was supposed to be home to study for exams and then go back to Milan. But I ended up not going back. I just to get my stuff, but not to do any exams or anything. And that was like a breaking point because I was like this model student or like how do you call that? Like always getting like really good grades and then suddenly it was like, oh my god, I'm not doing my exams. What's happening to me? Like I'm crying all the time. Like what's wrong with me? And I realized like I that connection is something, you know, now I know that connection is part of my life purpose, bringing people together and connecting with other people. And when I was there, I was so lonely and not connecting with anyone. And it really had a big impact on me. And I just, when I kind of got out of that dark place, I was just reevaluating everything in my life, you know, like what am I doing? Who am I spending time with? Are my friends even my friends? Like, can I be my authentic self? And I had realized that, like many women, I feel like I felt like I had been a chameleon for most of my life, you know, like adapting to situations and circumstances to please other people and going to study abroad in the first place. I suddenly realized, like, well, that wasn't actually my choice either. I mean, it was my choice, but I just like hopped onto somebody else's bandwagon and I just was like, okay, I'll just go with it, even though it doesn't really feel good. It was like not guided by my intuition at all. My intuition was screaming at me, like, don't do this. But I felt like, you know, everyone was doing it there, and I just did it. And yeah, so that's when my awakening kind of started. And it only came like a year or a year and a half later that, you know, I really found sisterhood. Like in my yoga teacher training that I did, that was the first time that I was like, oh my God, there's people like me out there. And that's when my awakening just like skyrocketed. And I was like having all of these amazing, deep, profound spiritual conversations and I was like, oh my God, people like this actually exist. And that's kind of when I realized, like, I really want to bring people together in that way because it felt so sad for me to like go home and leave all these people behind. I mean, you can connect to them online, but it still wasn't the same. And so that's why the membership is something that I love. It's still online, but this it's the beauty about it being online is that it's something you can always go back to instead of like this yoga teacher training or this retreat or this festival that you go to. It's like this one experience and it's amazing and wonderful and then you go back home and it's like you can hold on to that feeling for a little bit but then it slowly fades away and I wanted to have something like sustainable that I and also other women who would long for that could go back to. But at the same time, I still like love like in-person gatherings, of course, which is why you know I love to organize retreats as well. So I guess that's how it all started.
Such an incredible journey. I have so much, like, you were taking the thoughts right out of my mind as you were speaking. Like, initially, when you said that you moved to Milan and that, like, when you went home to study for exams and you started having these insights where it's like, wow, I was a great student up until now. Like, what is happening? Why is school no longer in alignment with me? Just the fact that we're so adaptable, like, we're so malleable as humans that we just kind of go with what the collective energy is telling us to do. I know, especially us in like westernized countries, it's very standard. Like, do your school, like, go to some post secondary school, get a decent job, and just work until you retire. Like that's just standard. And I don't know, the collective, most people I know that are doing that route, they're actually quite happy with it. They're comfortable, they're stable, they're secure, and that's completely fine. But then when you start tuning into your own essence and your own energy and beginning to realize that there's an aspect of yourself that is not aligning with the collective energy that you've kind of been disregarding your entire life, that's when first it seems like you're breaking, like you're having a complete meltdown, realizing that you're no longer in alignment with what society expects of you. But then you start tuning into yourself and realizing that you're now aligning with your own individualized purpose, which
Mm-hmm.
honestly is way more incredible than doing what the collective is doing. So that was
Mm-hmm.
like my initial thought when listening to your story. But I wanted to ask, so in terms of connection, was that something that you hadn't really established or found throughout your life, like up until kind of the break point at Milan?
Yeah, actually, it was something that I did struggle with, and it's only when I look back on it again, like in the moment, I was just like going with the flow and following the grain, and I knew something was kind of missing. I always longed for something more, but I never seemed to find it. So I felt like, huh, I guess it must not be out there. But this was a very subconscious process, you know. But when I look back on it now, like first of all, like I didn't really know who I was. And I feel like specifically when you're like a sensitive being and like very, I mean, we're all spiritual by nature, but I believe as a child I was already that way a little bit. But it's something that wasn't really encouraged, I don't think. And then you just kind of start adapting to everyone else. And I just lost like who I was and my soul and my authenticity. So that's the first thing. Because when you don't know who you are, like how do you know how you can attract like-minded people or
Mm-hmm.
people that you can resonate with. So that was one thing. And then also, you know, I always had friends. I was never bullied. I always had like connections, but it was always kind of, I had like good friends, but in a way it was superficial. When I look at
Mm-hmm.
the relationships I have now, it's like,
Like that
wow,
depth was missing, like that
yeah,
essence. Yeah.
definitely. And yeah, now I feel like I found it, and I'm still continuing to find it. It's like a continuous journey for me, and then helping others find it as well is such an exciting part that comes with that.
Amazing. And then just to add to your membership that you spoke about, the fact that it's online right now too, just shows how interconnected we all are. Like, yeah, we're located all across the world, but at the same time, we could still commune, we could still connect. Like, distance can't really tear soul groups, soul sisters, soul brothers, so like soul siblings apart. Like, when
Hmm.
we're meant to align with each other and when we're meant to meet, we will, despite distance, location, time, any of that.
Yeah, that's incredible because I only started the membership like last month. And the women that are in there, the first time we did our moon circle or women's circle, it was incredible. It's like I just knew like, wow, all these women were meant to be here and we all vibed and aligned so well. And it's something that, you know, the synchronicities were just incredible and all just such powerful women. It made me so happy because as you said, like we all live in like neighboring countries, but everyone's welcome, of course. But coincidentally, we all live in neighboring countries, but we never would have met if we wouldn't have done that. And that made me feel so powerful that I brought these people together through an idea that I had, you know? So yeah, I think a message that comes through for me with that is like to not rob the world of your magic, which is something a friend told me like a few weeks ago, because you never know like when you can go along with a creation or an idea, like who else you could impact and influence with that, and that's just beautiful to witness.
No, absolutely. So I do want to ask, so this is a membership for females, right? Like a divine sisterhood. So how did you start getting attuned then to like this divine feminine energy and just being intuitive and then supporting other women and just coming together to collaborate and help each other grow?
Do you mean like how did I create the membership or the
No, just how
energy
did you
within?
start learning about like divine feminine energy and the power of it?
Mm, I mean, it all started with my yoga teacher training, you know, and then I knew I didn't just need to go there for the yoga because I honestly I had been doing yoga for like a year or something, but it wasn't like my greatest passion either. And only when I arrived, and later on, I was like, well, the main reason I was meant to be there was to discover sisterhood and the divine feminine. Like there was like one man there, and all the rest of us were women coming together, and that's kind of where it started. And then with the divine feminine, it's so funny. I can't even explain how it came to me. It's just something that just started to come into my awareness. I think it started with reading the book Light is the New Black by Rebecca Campbell. I don't know if you know her. She has a
Yeah, I have
membership
like
as
all
well.
her oracle decks.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, they're amazing. And that's sort of kind of where it started, but there's not like one point that I can pinpoint. And I just went with it. I went with the journey. And yeah, it's just an amazing interest of mine. And definitely in the sense that, we're switching paradigms. We're moving from this older way of being, this old world, into like a new earth. And I believe that the main key in that is the divine feminine energy in both men, women, all genders, because that nurturing, compassionate, empathic side, and I believe the divine feminine is also closely related to Mother Earth, like nature, Gaia, and all of that, like just those qualities. It's so important that we start embodying them towards ourselves and towards others. And it's such an important part in the awakening of the planet, let's say. And then also finding a balance, of course, like between the feminine and the masculine.
So let's talk about what the divine feminine actually is for those who don't know. So do you mind just explaining?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a vague concept for me to explain. I think I would start off with saying, like, we all carry the divine feminine and divine masculine within us, and the divine feminine are just like the female traits of sensitivity, compassion, empathy, rest, yin, like internal, whereas, male energies are more like yang, external, taking action, all of that stuff. And so when it comes to the divine feminine, it's more about like just starting to embody these qualities, because a lot of us women are in the male like more in the divine masculine than in the divine feminine, because this world is built up around hustling and doing the hustle when you're like your business or your side business and getting to where you want to be, your goals, your dreams, and all of that is amazing. And I definitely love that as well. But and I see this in the spiritual community a lot. And I also saw this within myself, that we still go in that overdrive of like taking action and not taking rest for ourselves. And for me, I was teaching yoga for a while, and I just noticed how much I was doing that as well. Like I was teaching yoga, I was working, doing all that stuff, but I wasn't taking care of me really, and I wasn't really taking that time to rest and to connect to my soul. And that was a pivotal moment there as well. So yeah, I guess that's kind of what the divine feminine is about, and how important it is that we start embodying these qualities again and finding the balance, not going too much into the divine feminine either, because then we're just, I mean, it's beautiful, but we need the balance there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to add to everything you just said, like the universal law of gender. Every single thing in this multiverse contains both divine feminine and divine masculine energy. But what's really interesting, I look at history all the time, like human history especially, and just seeing the evolution from, I honestly think Earth started, or like human evolution started with such divine feminine energy. Like I see like ancient Egypt and Isis, like so many goddesses, they honestly ruled years ago. And I don't even know when in human history that we started transforming a more decent balance between the two into something that turned so hyper masculine, so divine masculine led. So
Yeah,
that's
it's
just like
crazy.
something I've been thinking about recently, because especially recently, luckily we're awakening now, and I do feel a lot of divine feminine essence coming through to our collective. But the past few decades, especially, or like even the past century, very divine masculine led, almost
Mm-hmm.
to the point where we couldn't see past the divine masculine. Like you were saying, like hustle culture, money, working, action, 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 which is fine, but you need to establish that balance. And I know me personally, Like I do tap into my divine feminine energy constantly, but I do a lot of the times feel very divine masculine led, where I'm always trying to accomplish something and set all these goals. And I feel like I'm not doing enough when I'm not taking action, when I'm not doing something. Like rest days to me, I'm hard on myself because I don't know, I feel like I'm not being productive if I'm just lying down all day. So, and I know a lot of people feel similarly. So then how could we kind of just adjust ourselves and be okay with resting and tapping into your intuition and just being compassionate for yourself and loving yourself? How do we start
Mm.
making that transition?
It's so true what you say. Like, I recognize myself in that too, of like feeling guilty for like taking a rest day. But then, when I look back on it, it's like, oh my God, I was working so hard. I was such a workaholic in that period of my life. Or like just like last month, for example, where I
Where
was
we were
trying
both
like,
sick, we were trying to
oh yeah,
connect to
right,
do
we were
this
both sick.
recording. I
Oh my
honestly, that was
God.
burnout for me, like my physical body reacting to
Same.
burnout because I was working too hard.
Yeah, definitely. And I was like, this is so ironic, but I was working on the membership and thinking like, oh, what should I include? And choose like the target audience and all that. And I was going so in overdrive with that, which is ironic because the membership is all about like the divine feminine and allowing ourselves to rest. So how can you, like, that's a good question. Like, how can we motivate ourselves and find our place in our lives to allow that rest and the divine feminine to come in? And it's all about like personal responsibility first of all, which is a difficult thing, of course, but just like making those conscious decisions and those time slots in your day where you can really just come to yourself. And some people work well with structure, like each morning I create some time for myself to meditate or whatever, or just like do what my body wants in the moment, whether it's dancing, yoga, whatever it may be, or just like resting and daydreaming. For other people, they like to be more flexible in it. And that's also one of the reasons why, I don't mean to like plug my membership the whole time, but like that's one of the reasons why I started it, to help keep each other accountable in a way to do that. For example, in our last moon circle, it was so beautiful. Like we were in this virtual circle, and there was this exercise where one person was just receiving, so they have to just sit and let their palms rest on their legs and palms facing up, just in that receiving energy. And the rest of us were like giving energy, like our palms were facing the screen, the person that we were sending the energy to, and just like allowing this universal energy of love to flow through towards that person. And that person didn't need to do anything but like receive. And that was so powerful. And it made, it was pretty emotional as well. And I just noticed like, like we don't do this a lot. We're not used to doing this, just like allowing ourselves to receive. And even me, like when they were doing it for me as well, like I felt a little bit guilty about like all of them like focusing their energy on me and like on me receiving. So it's something that we're not even used to, which is crazy. And definitely as women who are like the carriers of the divine feminine energy, but as women, we are more inclined to give as well. So I think like that's part of the divine feminine as well. Like we love giving, we're very empathetic, we're very sensitive, we can feel other people's energy and we can easily walk in their shoes. And when it comes to ourselves, it's difficult to like give that to ourselves as well. But yeah, it starts with personal responsibility and then finding some sort of community that, or even like a few friends where you can really make that deal with each other. I think that's really something that helps.
I think that's such a good point, just establishing that community too, because again, like the collective right now is still very divine masculine. So that is something like that's an essence and energy that we're constantly surrounded with right now. So it's something that impacts us even subconsciously. Like we don't know we're being taking all this action or we're goal oriented or we're focused on more masculine divine masculine traits because that's just kind of reality for us. That's what we're surrounded by daily. So to really find that little community, even where you could start tapping into that divine feminine essence, that energy, and just like you said, allow yourself to receive that and just be still and compassionate and caring for yourself and then those around you. It's really great to start establishing those little communities, those little groups, to be able to just literally become acquainted with that energy, to begin tapping into it, to begin realizing that you're not alone when you're resting or where you're being
Yeah.
loving or you're being compassionate. Because that energy
Mhm.
exists universally. Like the universe, again, is divine masculine and divine feminine. But for some reason, because we're so surrounded by divine masculine energy all the time, it's sometimes hard for us to even know what the divine feminine is or how to even reach it or connect with it.
Mhm. Definitely, and now more than ever, we're, like, in this period of time where, the individual is stressed more than the community, you know, and we were in that already, in that tendency of society where people, are more we're all living in these individual houses, and when you look back, like, in time, like, we were living in communities and tribes, like, having a lot of communal energy there, but slowly and surely we slowly move towards living more individual lives, and definitely now, like, the global things happening on the planet, like, we're even more and more led to living this, like, to an individualist society, and that's why community is so powerful, and that's also why the internet is so powerful, and being able to do it digitally, and as we moved and are still moving, I guess, into the age of Aquarius, that's a lot about technology as well, and like using that to our advantage, not allowing it to overpower us, but using the technology for things like this, for building communities, for staying in touch with other people. And I think it's such a wonderful tool to just like connect to new people that otherwise you would have never connected to. Like, imagine that the internet didn't exist right now. Like, that would be super
Mhm.
crazy, right? Because I wouldn't be able to connect to you right now, which is crazy. I wouldn't have been able to meet so many wonderful women all over the world who think similarly as me and who feel the same way as me and who wanted to build like an online community with me, like, yes, in the membership, but also just on Instagram, like amazing women that I've met over the years. And that's just an amazing tool for going into this new age. Yeah.
That's a really good point because I feel like some people are resistant to any type of transformation or change, especially when it comes to like technological developments. But like, yeah, exactly what you said. Like, there are benefits to it. We need to kind of establish those benefits and realize that progressing and change and innovation isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like, the age of Aquarius is all about that, but it's all about using that for like social reform and change and for collective benefit. So it
Hmm.
really is, yeah, just understanding how we could continue, like, even with all the global events happening right now, I do think there's some good to it. Like, I don't want to
Hmm.
disregard all of the chaos and all the pain so many people are going through, but at the same time, look how we've been able to connect. Look what people's priorities became. People are okay now with being still, with staying at home. That was something that honestly last year I couldn't even imagine, like having work days at home. What? That's like absurd. And now
Hmm.
people are becoming comfortable with that. They're understanding that they don't need a million material things to be satisfied. Like, they need their presence. They're becoming attuned with themselves. They're connecting with other individuals that maybe they would have never connected with prior to everything that's going on. But I do have a question for you, and I'm interested to hear what you're going to say. Do you think some of the collective events happening right now were caused, maybe not directly, but kind of caused or brought about by a more divine masculine energy?
Yes, I do believe that.
I agree. Me too.
Yeah, I don't want to go too much into it, I don't think, but yeah, I do believe it was caused by a divine masculine energy, but like a toxic divine
Mhm.
masculine energy, because divine masculine, like, is beautiful just the way the divine feminine is beautiful. However, as we've been talking about, like, it's just become a little bit in overdrive, but also toxic. And that's not like the fault of the collective. It's something that's more. how do I say this, like authority led or something. um, so yeah, and I think like what you were saying is true. Like during this time of stillness, like more people are actually like coming closer to their selves and to their souls. Like I was walking in the park yesterday and I saw so many people and I encountered some people I hadn't seen in a while. And those were people that never really used to go for walks or I never saw them there. And suddenly like we're exchanging like tips for walking routes and all of that, and that was incredible. And I also encountered like someone from my family who suddenly started to get into meditation and transcendence meditation, I think it's called, and he was like talking to me about how closer he felt to himself and how much more emotionally balanced that he was, and just like coming closer to his soul. And that is such like that's a divine feminine energy influencing all of us, like nature, rest, taking time for ourselves, meditation. And so like it's not really working, that toxic masculine drive, whatever it is, because it's being responded to by the divine feminine actually rising within us, which is a beautiful tendency to see and gives me a lot of hope for the future as well.
So, what does a balanced society look like to you? So, if the world, like the collective energy of the world, was perfectly balanced between divine feminine and divine masculine, what would that look like for you? Like, what do you envision?
I think, wow, that's like a difficult question to answer, but a very interesting one. Like, of course, like I think it would just be more balanced, but also I hope it can be a world where, for example, for women or menstrual cycles are more something that we can truly use to live our lives, and that it's appreciated and accepted by society and encouraged by society that we live that way. That because, the reason why we have these cycles within us is so that, we know when it's time to rest and when it's time to like work hard or like work in general, like being active and still as well, and finding that balance. And I think the menstrual cycle actually is like a beautiful example of that in general, like in a society where we just follow our intuition and know when it's time to rest and know when it's time to work. And that's a difficult thing to navigate. But for us women, it's a little bit more easy because we have that menstrual cycle to like use as a guide. But we'll see what it will look like. Like I'm very, very curious what it will look like. I hope it will surprise us in a beautiful, positive way. I think it will. It will just be a more balanced society, and also one where I hope that men will be able to express their emotions more, and where it's accepted that they express their emotions as well. Because that's a big thing that's leading towards the toxicity in the divine masculine right now, where it's just not like accepted almost when a man cries or shows their emotions. And it's so sad to me. And yeah, I do understand the men who find it difficult to express those emotions as well, because everywhere you look, when you grow up in this world as a man, it's just shown as not acceptable or
Mm.
something. And yeah, I hope that will change definitely.
That's such a great point, and I just want to like emphasize that divine masculine and divine feminine energy has nothing to do with societal gender. Just
Mhm.
because we're females doesn't mean we're going to have this like hyper divine feminine energy, and same to males, like they shouldn't be
Definitely.
exhibiting only hyper masculine energy. Like it really is a balance, and it's something that we encompass. Like we encompass both the divine feminine and divine masculine within each and every one of us. So yeah, that's another thing. Like I've definitely, like one of my degrees is in women's studies, so we definitely learned a lot about like hyper masculine, and ever since like boys are children, like such young boys, they're shown that like you need to address, I don't know, issues through fighting. Like you can't talk about your problems, or if you feel any type of heightened emotion, just suppress it. Like you're not allowed to cry. You're not allowed to get like, or they, well, I don't know, I was gonna say hyper aggressive, but they do. So it's just, it's like frowned upon to show any type of like heightened emotion, to show that you're affected by anything that's happening in your life. And honestly, I feel like recently, the past few decades, a lot of women are tapping into that too, where many of us are suppressing our emotions too, just because it's the collective energy. If half the population isn't showing theirs, it's kind of like, okay, should we try to imitate that and be like that as well? So really interesting. And I think we need to change our rhetoric, especially how we like speak to children and how just societal like institutions, schools, the family structure, politics, how those really influence us and influence the children into
Mhm.
tapping like into their true essence, into their balanced energy, as opposed to like, oh, you're born societal gender male. Now you have to like only tap into divine masculine energy. Like that isn't okay. And that isn't true
Mhm.
to any of us. Like we're not one or
Mhm.
the other. I hate this like constant binary that society imposes on us. Now this is getting like
Mhm.
political, which I didn't want that to be. But yes, I just wanted to make that point as well.
Oh, that's an amazing point to make. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like the divine feminine, like within, like you say, like women, we take over the collective energy as well, and like men don't show their emotions, and it's become like this thing where we as women don't like show our emotions sometimes as much as well. And I definitely recognize it in my upbringing as well a little bit. And it all starts with like the educational system. I definitely agree with that. There's a lot of work to be done on our education because it all starts with children. And I was talking to a friend the other day, and she has like some neighbors, like children that come by in her place like a couple of times a week. And I saw these children like back then, like when I was at her house, and I just suddenly like was able to look at them from like this objective, sorry, I can't talk right now, objective point of view. And the girl, she was like 7 years old or something, or maybe like 10, but she was already talking about like work and career or something. Like they were having some sort of career day where they had to dress up like who they wanted to be later, which can sound like a lucrative and fun thing to do, but it was just so suddenly
But you
obvious
lose
to
touch of
me.
like your inner child
Yeah,
by becoming an adult, like embodying adult mentality at such
mhm.
a young age.
Definitely, and it puts a lot of pressure on these children as well. Like they're asking me and my friend, like, "What do you do for work?" or "Who do you want to be?" And they're talking about like how they did chores for their parents and how they got some money for that. And like it's pretty innocent when you look at it
Mhm.
at first, or when you're like still in the illusion of society, I guess I would say. But when you're kind of out of that and like in your more in your spiritual nature, it's suddenly like, wow, like I haven't seen kids for ages, and when I suddenly do see them again, they talk to me about career and money and like whatever that is, and it just shows that the whole system is set up and making children, already giving them this huge pressure and educating them to be in their divine masculine as well instead of
Mhm.
their feminine, and
It
finding
just
that balance.
becomes like this subconscious imprint, like a
Hmm.
conditioning in their mind that they unknowingly, like it's now embodied in them.
Yeah.
They don't even consciously know about it. They're not even consciously aware of it.
No,
That's so
not at all.
frightening.
Yeah, really frightening, but they're just like children, so
Mhm.
obviously they don't know. Like they just pick up everything. They're like sponges energetically and also like with
Mhm.
everything that you say to them. So yeah, that was kind of a wake up call for me. It was like,
Wow.
whoa.
So
Yeah.
I do want to talk about tapping into the divine feminine. So just collectively or even individually, what are some activities we could do to tap into this divine feminine essence? I know you briefly mentioned like immersing yourself in nature, so maybe we could discuss that
Mhm.
as well. But what are some of your favorite divine feminine activities?
I think dancing is a powerful one, just like by yourself or with other people. That's beautiful too because it allows you to just tap into your intuition and allowing your body to move how it wants to move, as well as tapping in more to that like sensual and sexual energy as well
Mhm.
and creative energy that comes along with that. And I think that's beautiful. And just being able to like dance with nobody watching, but just like totally like feeling yourself and feeling
Mhm.
good in that, I think that's wonderful. And next to that, like I would say the more creative type of activities, like whatever your soul is like called to, whether it's being creative in drawing or painting or creative in like even like yoga is a creative thing, I would say, or meditation, or kind of those types of activities, like taking a good shower to like cleanse yourself. It's just all about self care as well, I would say, and also going into nature is a big one as well, at least for me. But I think it starts with like creating this empty space in your life where it's like, okay, I don't have to do anything tonight. I have nowhere to be, nothing to do. I'm not going to be on my social media, on my computer, whatnot. What is my soul asking me to do right now? Like, I'm giving you rest. What do you want to do? And I think the answer of what you're supposed to do, I guess, that on that specific moment will come. And maybe it is taking a walk. Maybe it's just napping, going to bed early. Maybe it's taking a shower, something like that. Like, I'm pretty sure that your soul is not going to say, like, oh, let's just like be a workaholic and work on all of my projects right now. But like really invite that feminine energy to come through, and doing a meditation with that is also a really beautiful thing if you're like uncertain of how to connect with it. Just like connecting to the divine feminine through meditation can help bring some answers as well, I would say.
Yeah, I feel like it's honestly because the divine feminine essence really is about tuning into your intuition and
Mm-hmm.
just tuning in and understanding what your mind, body, and soul all need in that moment. Because, like you said, and it was so funny, I couldn't help but laugh. Like when I take days off, like rest days, I end up doing a whole bunch of like tasks. Like I have like a whole goal list of stuff I need to get done. And like, yeah, I'll start like creating things or even like recording podcasts or doing all these things. And it's like, this was supposed to be my rest day, like my day of stillness. How did I think that my soul wanted to do all these different things? So that
Mm-hmm.
was really funny. Like that you mentioned that I couldn't help but like laugh at it. But yeah, just do a quick meditation, tune into your whole body. Like, are you sore? Like your physical body gives all the signals. So is your back hurting? Are your legs stiff? Is your head hurting? Like, do you need to honestly just take a day to lie in bed and do nothing and completely rest? Like, scrolling through social media isn't a day of rest. Watching Netflix all day isn't a day of rest. It really is like taking a nice bath or a nice shower and just being still in the moment with your entire self, your entire presence. I feel like that really is tuning into the divine feminine energy, at least for me. And I
Mm-hmm.
know that
Definitely.
like activities like that, where I'm honestly just immersed in only myself and my essence, and everything else is just completely irrelevant that day. That's when I feel like my most divine femme.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I love nature. Like my whole birth chart is basically all earth. So whenever I'm just immersed, like putting my feet in soil or sand or
Mm-hmm.
water and just having like trees surrounding me or like insects and little animals, like honestly, that's when I
Mm-hmm.
feel so interconnected to honestly the entire universe, the entire world. Like I
Mm-hmm.
become one with the earth and earth becomes one with me as we are. But it's something that we do forget, especially like I live in a big city. So all I see are
Mm-hmm.
like buildings and streets and cars and so many people. And it's, you kind of forget that you're so interconnected with the world around you.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. And what you said earlier about like when you're having a rest day and you end up doing all that stuff and not really resting, it made me think of something, and it's that I think a lot of people are kind of afraid of stillness and coming closer to themselves because it kind of makes them a little bit nervous, I would say, of like really shutting everything off, like even social media and Netflix and all of that, and just like really tuning into yourself and to your soul. Like, if you're not used to that, it can be such a confrontational thing, specifically for men who are very much in their divine masculine, but also women who are very much in their divine masculine, because suddenly, like, you're closer to your emotions and to your sensitive nature, and I think that was like that was an interesting thing to mention because for a lot of people it's still difficult to do that. And in those cases it can be beneficial to do it in more community type settings or in doing a yoga class, for example, like making yourself do that with a group of people instead of just doing it on your own, because then you sometimes just don't end up doing it at
Mm-hmm.
all. And what you said about nature is so beautiful. Like when I go, I'm also like a lot of Capricorn in my chart, so very earthy. And whenever I go into nature, I just feel like this divine feminine energy, like it's this cosmic mother kind of welcoming me home. And it's so beautiful. And that's why it's
You feel
also one
so
of my,
nurtured and cared for whenever you're
yeah,
immersed in nature. Like I feel
definitely.
protected. I feel like I belong.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's
Yeah.
just home. Even when I'm in these like foreign forests around the world, I always find
Wow.
myself a forest. I just feel at home. I feel like I belong. I feel, yeah, like Mother Nature
Mhm.
is just nourishing me and caring for me.
Wow, I love that because that's always how I describe it as well. Like, no matter where I am in the world, as long as I find some piece of nature, it's like, okay, no worries, no stress, I'm home, which is so beautiful and beautiful that you feel that way as well.
Amazing. I love the divine feminine energy. I wish it was something that as a collective we exhibited more often, but definitely with the age of Aquarius and just like new earth emerging, I do feel like in the next few decades, we're going to start to attune collectively to that essence, to that energy, and hopefully we'll establish a more balanced energy here on earth. I do think everything that's happened these like this past year especially was bringing about this new energy. I feel like we really had to get comfortable with being still and being calm and just situated for a little bit to bring about this. Because, yeah,
Mhm.
we went for so long to the other divine masculine side, and it like that's unsustainable. It's not going to last when you're excess with one or the other. So,
Mhm.
really, it was, I do think, kind of all the events that happened this past year really was to get us comfortable and ready for this new energy to emerge.
Definitely. Beautiful way of explaining that. And I believe the same thing. Like, everything that has happened and is continuing to happen, no matter how dark it gets, like it's still meant to happen this way, I feel. And I don't mean to be like unsensitive or whatever to other people and their struggles and their losses, but I do believe that it was meant to be this way to bring us closer to ourselves, and everything kind of needed to and still needs to crumble until we can start building this new foundation,
Mm.
which we are already building. And I believe like 2022 is going to be like a pivotal year for that as well. So I'm really looking forward to what the future holds and focusing on love and the light and the divine feminine as we talked about. Because we get drowned very quickly in the energies that are going around right now. Like, tapping into that collective energy isn't always the best thing to do when there's so much fear and anger and frustration going around and sadness. And so it's more important than ever to stay in your center and protect yourself, and already just like balance the divine masculine and the divine feminine within yourself, because it all starts with you, right?
You're
And
taking
that's
the
how we'll
thoughts just
change
like
it.
right out of my mind. Exactly. I was going to say, like, as we
Mm,
await for this big collective shift to really just attune to yourself and understand how you could find balance within. And then, yeah, just allow the collective energy. Cause like once we find balance within ourselves, we start projecting this balanced frequency out into like the collective matrix as well. So in
mhm,
that way, we're just projecting out balance and like into the world. And then our energy is going to help balance other people's energy and others until we're all collectively balanced.
mhm,
So I don't know, the shift is happening, but I definitely think just attune to yourself and start with that inner shift and just watch how your projected reality begins to change as well. And it's an
mhm,
exciting time, I think. Like again, not trying to be insensitive to everything that's happening. I know we've all been touched at this point by what's been happening collectively this past year, but it really is like how can you find comfort in it, find stillness in it, and just attune to yourself and understand what needs to change internally, what shifts you need to make internally so that you could help shift the collective as well.
mhm. Yeah, beautiful. I think the exact same way.
So, do you have any last words on the divine feminine energy? Any last tips, advice?
I think what we ended it with is like the best advice possible, really, to just that it all starts with you. And when you get frustrated at the world and what's going on, just remember that the most powerful shift is a shift you make within yourself, and you can't force other people to see things a certain way or do things a certain way or to embody their own divine feminine essence. Like, if you're frustrated with the whole like capitalist hustle culture, like you can't really change that. But also, you can by changing your own
Mm.
energy and influencing other people's energy that way, and just allowing the balance of the feminine and the masculine to come through.
That's
So I
such a
think
great
that's,
point. And just being
yeah.
compassionate and understanding that we're all on our own individualized journey. So if someone's not quite
Mm-hmm.
ready to find that balance yet or to tap into that divine feminine energy, just be patient with them and give them the resources to try to discover themselves,
Mm-hmm.
like tap into self discovery and actualization so that they can evolve at their own pace. So that was a
Yeah.
really good point to mention. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. But I think that's all. Yeah.
Well, thanks for being here, Olivia. This was a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was very interesting and I love talking with you, chatting with you. And I'm excited about your podcast as well and what it will bring to you and to the collective.
If you feel enlightened and inspired by the intuition age, I would be eternally grateful if you head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and review. This platform truly allows me to act as a catalyst for expanding and elevating human consciousness, both individually and collectively. All shares, downloads, and subscribes help me distribute these divine topics to even more conscious souls. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you at the next episode.